What up? What up? We're live again, dude.
Back in the saddle.
Back in the saddle, on the horse.
It feels good to be back. I got to tell you, for those that don't regularly watch the show and don't know Mike and myself as much as some, it's hard to believe, but this is not our full-time jobs, podcasting. And if it was, we'd probably be bankrupt and or divorced by now. But no, that we both have lives in and outside of this. We'll appreciate everybody's patience. We've had a lot going on family-wise, and I've had some surgical stuff that's kind of hindered us. So it's been a little while, but certainly glad to be back and getting in the swing of things for sure.
Well, they say to be effective at anything, you have to move with passion, purpose, and urgency. We have passion, we have purpose. The urgency hasn't really been there for us. But I mean, you've been dealing with another shoulder surgery. Chris just getting done. What is that? Your third or fourth one on your shoulder?
Oh, 7.
Oh, I was close. I'm on the under.
Yeah, they all kind of run into each other at this point. So it is what it is. But we're back in the saddle.
Well, we want to let you guys know is that sometimes we do a recorded episode. My favorite is live because you guys get the opportunity to engage. So if you want if you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, give permission so that we can see who you are, because what we can do during that time is we can actually show your questions, your comments, your concerns, anything you have to say, your insults, you can hurl those our way too. But right now it says Facebook user. So good morning, Facebook user. If you get an opportunity to say who you are, it helps us out a lot to engage with you. So take a minute, give permission on Facebook if you can do that. If you're on YouTube, make sure you're logged in. But yeah, we'd love to engage. We got a whole bunch on the docket today, Chris. What are we going to talk about today?
We're covering everything coming on. Obviously, it's hard to believe the midway point of the NFL season. Like, it feels like it just begun in my eyes. We are halfway there. So we're gonna dive pretty heavy into what's going on in the NFL from a player perspective, teams perspective, cards perspective. Obviously, the NBA is moving right along. We're in the games have started there. So some teams are starting to emerge and some players from that perspective. World Series just finished up. So for those baseball fans, I think a lot of the baseball world kind of rejoiced when the Astros lost. So unless you're a homer from the beginning, no one likes a cheat. So, the fact that they lost and the Atlanta Braves won, good for them. So we'll get into a little bit of that. But obviously the biggest thing for us that's near and dear to our hearts is the NFL and what's going on. So we are coming into week 9. And I think there's some teams that are a bit of a surprise, both in what they've been able to do and some of those that what they've not been able to do. So halfway through, Mike, what are your biggest takeaways right now from the NFL?
I mean, there's never been a larger amount of parity in the NFL in the recent history that I've seen as I have this year. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. For the card market, I think it's bad because in years past, there's been Lamar in 19 going for his MVP. Mahomes, being this outstanding superstar stud. Last year, there was a bunch of people competing for MVP. This year, it's kind of like everyone's middle of the pack. We have no undefeated teams. We had a couple undefeated teams going into this point last year. We have none left. And, it's crazy because some of those teams are losing to bad teams. I mean, I saw a thing the other day where it tracked down where, we always do this. Well, this team beat this team and this team beat this team and this beat. There was an argument the other day that the Jets could arguably be the best team in the league right now, beating the Titans and the Bengals,
right? The
best team in the AFC. You know what I mean? Like that's the two teams the Jets have beat this year is the Titans and the Bengals, arguably 2 of the top 3 or 4 teams in the AFC right now.
Yeah, it's crazy. If you look at just conference rankings right now, halfway through the season, and if we go, conference by conference, if you look at in the AFC, number 1, you've got Tennessee Titans sitting at 6-2. Then the Las Vegas Raiders, Ravens, Bills, Bengals, Steelers, Chargers, kind of rounding out the top there. So when you look at that, I'd look at, all right, you got Tennessee at 6-2, great. However, Derrick Henry potentially out for the season. Earliest they're picking that he may come back would be playoffs. So that, as well as I do, that is their bell cow come the latter part of the year. So their last, 4 or 5 game stretch, they rely on him heavily. So will we see them be able to hold on to the top spot there? I don't think it's going to happen. You look at a team.
I heard something interesting yesterday that this is coming from a doctor and a person who studies these injuries for the surgery he had. And they said he's dealt with it more in basketball than he has in football. It's an odd injury for a running back to have. They said you don't normally see this. Again, he was on pace for a record-setting 420 plus carries No one's ever had that in a season. He had 397 last year. It's just overuse. It's all there is to it. He's a superhuman, but I mean, nobody can avoid injury if you're carrying him that many times. The thing was, they said that an NBA player misses an average of 45 games, which is a 5 to 6 month window, meaning that if he had, this was before the surgery, I was listening to this on a podcast, if he has a surgery, there's zero chance that he plays again this year. And I know the Titans are being optimistic and they want to see how quickly he recovers. He's still a younger guy, rookie in 2016. He's obviously a super freak. So we've seen it before, players come back, but I would say there's zero chance that Derrick Henry plays this year. Not to mention the Titans schedule is not the easiest moving forward. They were very lucky to sneak out the win against the Colts, which I think if the Colts win that, the whole AFC landscape changes in a big way. Titans get that win there, but now they have Rams, New Orleans, Houston, New England, and a bye. And then they have a little bit easy to the end of the schedule with Jacksonville, Pittsburgh, San Fran, Miami, and Houston. The key is how many wins can they sneak out going into their bye?
Well, and if you look at those first 4 games you talked about, I mean, there's potential 3 losses there. New England's coming in their own. They're starting to play well. Rams obviously are one of the top teams in the NFL, and the Saints proved that they can beat anybody on any given Sunday. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Then you've got the Las Vegas Raiders. They're sitting there at 5-2. But obviously you've got concerns. Head coach is out. You've got that whole scandal and debacle that went on there. Latest, obviously, with Henry Ruggs, just an absolutely horrible incident there. And even if losing someone like Ruggs as a player, let's say it was an injury and not the unfortunate circumstances he was in, the circumstance around how it happened, that's got to weigh heavy on a team. I mean, that just in itself carries, some kind of black cloud. And so you wonder how they're going to be able to respond and come out of that and be able to maintain, especially in the conference that they're in.
Well, I would say that if you're going to have any quarterback at the helm of a team that's dealing with all the things between the Gruden situation, the Ruggs situation, there's no better one than Derek Carr. And I don't mean from a talent perspective, but he's a very outspoken, God-fearing person. He's probably the most positive person you're going to see at that position as far as dealing with these types of situations. He relies on his faith to get him through these moments. And I think that you're going to see, not from a talent perspective, but from a personal perspective and a leadership perspective, Derek Carr look like an MVP moving forward for the season. If the Raiders make the playoffs, I don't see how you can't. I don't think he'll win the MVP. I don't think he's necessarily deserving of the MVP, but from a leadership perspective, he may be a leader MVP looking at every team in the league as far as being able to overcome. Lamar Jackson, his talent has been able to overcome injuries, but from the social and personal perspective, Derek Carr has been able to overcome the Gruden situation, who he's close friends with, dealing with a Ruggs situation, which I do believe Derek Carr has a type of personal relationships where this weighs on him emotionally as much as it does, anyone outside of the direct people involved in the accident and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how he responds. I look for the Raiders to kind of rally around it in a way, but it could go either way.
Yeah, you brought up a point there with the MVP too, and that's something, this may be a debate for another time, but to me, and this is how I've always looked at it, MVP is the most valuable person to your team. It's not the most valuable person in the NFL. It's the most valuable person makes the biggest impact for your team. If you remove X, does Y still happen? And so to your point, I think Derek Carr is one of those individuals that could be in the talks if he continues to kind of elevate them and lead them down the path. So you turn the corner there, you start looking at the AFC North. You've got the Ravens overall in third at 5-2, and the Bengals right behind them at 5-3. I think this is one of those divisions, if any, that's probably up in the air the most. As much as I love my Baltimore Ravens, their inconsistent play is just killing them. The injuries obviously was a big concern. They haven't been able to overcome that. Their backfield is, averaging veterans that have been in the league for 10 to 12 years. So, they're having some struggles there where in the past you've really seen them being able to excel. As much as I think that Lamar's made improvements in the pocket and from his passing presence, their defense is letting them down. And there's just been too many close games. So I'm not bought in with the fact that they're going to be, necessarily this powerhouse coming into the playoffs. They do have a chance to win their next 3 games. So their schedule's a little light, but then they get into conference play and that's where things tighten up. They still have Green Bay on their schedule. They still have the Rams on their schedule. So that's going to be an interesting kind of dynamic to watch. And then Cincinnati, of course, you've got Burrow who's playing and with Jamar Chase at next level. There, so his comeback is strong and potential comeback player of the year. So AFC North, I think, is still wide open.
Yeah, so here's what we're looking at as far as who's in the playoffs, and let's do a little like a drill activity here. So here's who your division leaders are getting into the playoffs, and getting the bye would be the Titans currently. We know that's probably most likely going to change with Henry out, even though they signed Grandpa Peterson. But Tennessee Titans with first place, Raiders, Ravens, and Bills. So they're shooing, and then your current wild cards are the Bengals, Chargers, and Steelers, with the NFC North or the AFC North currently putting in 3 teams from their division. Now, at 4-4, there are 3 teams: the Patriots, Chiefs, and the Browns. So the Chiefs is currently sitting outside of the playoffs. But if you're looking at the Titans, Raiders, Ravens, Bills, Bengals, Chargers, Steelers, Chris, out of those 7 teams, which teams of those don't make the playoffs right now? If we go all the way to the end of the season, which one of those aren't going to survive?
All right. So I think Steelers are going to be out as a wild card. I don't think they're going to have the steam to win the division. If you've watched Ben play, I mean, shaky at best from the quarterback perspective. He's been able to manage games, but it's not the fear-imposing Steelers that we're used to seeing. Their defense is going to have to carry them. I just don't see it happening when you've got teams like, if you look at the AFC West right now, you've got the Raiders. They may have a chance to hang on. The Chargers still haven't been playing their best football. And Kansas City Chiefs, I don't care who you are, you can never write them off. You look at this week going into Green Bay, and there's a potential for a loss on the schedule. Then you've got Aaron Rodgers going to be out for the game. That elevates Kansas City's opportunity to come away with a W there. So I don't think we've seen the end of them, especially when they get into conference play. I think in the East, Buffalo is going to ride at home. New England has a chance to sneak in there and be one of those playoff teams. So I would probably bounce Pittsburgh would be my first, and that's not a homer decision. That's just based on strength of schedule. They still have multiple conference games, and just the way that they're playing offensively, I don't know that they're going to be able to hang.
Well, and before anyone pounds you and hounds you for saying that the Steelers aren't going to get it, I have to agree with you, because if you're looking at their schedule, they have Bears, Lions, Chargers, Bengals, which Bears, Lions, they're fine, but Chargers, Bengals, Ravens, Vikings, Titans, Chiefs, Browns, Ravens. I mean, even if they split those games, I don't think that's enough to get in. So I would agree with you that they don't make it. And so out of the remaining teams, you say the Steelers don't. Did you have another one that you say wouldn't make it, or do the rest look good?
I think, to me, if it holds true, I mean, I would put maybe Vegas Raiders on the bubble only based on the losses that they've had. But to your point, they've got enough of a lead now. Granted, it's only 1 game over the Chargers, 2 games over the Chiefs. I think that they could hold on for at least a wild card, even if they did slide a little bit. So, the one concern I have there is 3 teams from the AFC North I just don't see getting in. I think it's going to be a little bit more evenly spread out with maybe 2 teams per conference.
So we look at about 2 teams, and we'll get into the NFC here in a minute, but I want to just close this AFC conversation with this up. There are about 5 teams, I would say, that are in the mix. I mean, from the Jets on, we're going to eliminate Jets, Jags, Texans, Dolphins, eliminated. So look at these 5 teams. Which one of these 5 teams or multiple teams sneak into the playoffs? Patriots, Chiefs, Browns, Broncos, Colts. Who sneaks in? Patriots, Chiefs, Browns, Broncos, Colts.
I think the Patriots probably have the best chance right now, and then I can't rule out the Chiefs. I mean, you can't rule out back-to-back Super Bowl appearances and just sell them out, even as poorly as they're playing. I just think they're a team that finds a way to get it done.
I would agree with you there, and I would agree that the Patriots have a chance. I would say the only other conversation to have out of those teams, and again, you never know with this North here. The Browns, who knows? With Beckham's situation, I'm marking them off as well. I just think there's too much turmoil in that locker room. Mayfield's not performing well enough. It's sad because even with probably the best 3 running backs combo in the league between Chubb, Hunt, and now Dearness Johnson, who's running like a first stringer. Right. It's just not enough to get it done there, I don't think. But I will say the Colts and the Titans, one of those are getting in. I just think it could swap either way. Even though the Colts are 3-5 and the Titans have 6 wins, with the Henry situation, that could easily flip-flop. But it's going to be a long uphill battle for the Colts. They're really going to, and their schedule's not easy.
Yeah, that's the problem. Wentz has done enough to keep them in it. They just don't have the finish killer mentality. Whereas like a team like Baltimore inevitably right now could be 2-5 just as easy as they're 5-2. I mean, they have squeaked by some wins, but I think that's the difference. Their locker room and the way that they approach games and their team mentality is what separates them. And so I think when you start getting into cold weather games and you start getting into conference games, it's a mentality thing. And I just don't know if Wentz has that long term there with Indianapolis as opposed to some of these other teams.
Yeah, and I see, I don't know who it is, but Facebook user agreed with you, Patriots and Chiefs. And it's cool to see that. I think we're all kind of on that same page. And I would say that we're going to look back to that Chiefs or the Colts Titans game that just happened this week. That was a nail biter until the very end. And that ultimately, in that Wentz interception, that caused him to lose the game. That could be what their season ends up falling on, that they missed by a game or a tiebreaker where they lost to the Colts. And that could be the nail in the coffin. But let's go ahead and move to the NFC, and because we have guys getting ready to talk about it now, and I see the Niners popped up. But I got to address the Calvin Ridley situation, because just a couple weeks ago, I traded Calvin Ridley to Scott Ripley in one of our leagues. I traded Calvin Ridley for Noah Fant and Brandon Cooks. And at the time, I shared it to people, and they're like, "You got taken, man. Calvin Ridley's like a top 3 guy." And I was like, you know what, though? I had to make something. I was 0 wins. Since then in that league, I've won I believe that's the league I've won 3 games straight since then. I needed a tight end for the week. I got my Fant and got Cooks, who's been doing well. But then Ridley goes ahead and on Mental Awareness Month, following Mental Awareness Month in the NFL, says he needs to take time off for mental awareness. What's your just thoughts on that whole situation, Chris?
So it's unfortunate, I would say, from a team perspective, but obviously we've seen, just from a national perspective, mental health is a really unaddressed issue in our country. And so I will never fault somebody for saying that they need to take a break for mental awareness for anything, whether you're a professional athlete, whether, you're just Joe Schmo going in the office every day. If you've got something that's holding you back, you need to do it. I think this is something on a broader scale that needs to be addressed by the NFL. You talk about the Henry Ruggs situation, you talk about situations like this. What support systems are being put in place for these individuals? So we don't know the extent of what Calvin Ridley's going through, but then you've got individuals like a Henry Ruggs type scenario where these guys come into a lot of money, they don't have a lot of guidance, they feel invincible. What kind of safeguards are being put in place by the NFL to help protect them? So that's one of the things that, to me, just, I think we really need to make sure, we're looking at from a broader perspective. Ridley's going to do what he needs to do. And again, I can't really fault anybody for that. Hopefully he gets whatever he needs to corrected and can come back stronger. And in the meantime, we're going to see who's going to be that next person up, for, the Falcons. Is Kyle Pitts going to, continue his form and be that guy? They're going to have to turn to the running game a little bit more. I mean, there's been some inconsistencies there, so we'll see how it shakes out. But again, no fault to Calvin Ridley whatsoever. I mean, it's easy for us to get upset about fantasy football and losing and things, but they're dealing with real life, and money doesn't fix everything. And so I think you see that with a lot of these people.
Well, I would say coming out of a pandemic, like more than anything, we're seeing that be more prevalent, and people are trying to understand how to like readjust to societal norms and stuff like that. And I think that, it's important that people in the spotlight are open enough. It's almost like people who are willing to come out or, be brave enough to be honest with themselves and with the people around them. Mental illness kind of falls in that same thing. It's almost like for some people it feels embarrassing, and it shouldn't. That's just part of life. People deal with it in different ways, and having a support network to support you and realize what you're going through and understand that it's normal for a lot of people, that there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's important. My only fear is that situations like the Ben Simmons situation, and again, I imagine that he could be going through some mental problems there with what he dealt with following the finals last year and what he dealt with from the fan base. But I'm afraid there are some people that are going to use it as a crutch to get out of contracts, to stay at home when they're dealing with. And if that happens, it's like that has to be addressed too, because taking advantage of those things is almost as much as poking fun at it. If you are saying, oh, I'm dealing with mental illness to get out of a contract situation, to get out of something, which I believe is going to happen in the future. I think we're going to see it, but you can't call it out. And that's the only problem. And you're never going to know, because you can't question it. You don't know what people are going through, but I'm afraid the more we give that opportunity, we're going to see that be an issue, a crutch people use to lean on in certain situations. So not that it will happen, but I know the world we live in, and unfortunately there are people that have no conscience to do something like that.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Hopefully they'll work. I mean, obviously it's going to be something we're going to have to address in the offseason. So we'll see how that shakes out. But, I guess from that perspective, I don't know that, the Falcons are a team that anybody has to worry about right now as we talk about our playoff scenarios here. But when we switch over to the NFC, so we look at the top 5 from a conference perspective, you've got Green Bay at 7-1, tied with the Arizona Cardinals at 7-1, Dallas in there at 6-1, Tampa Bay at 6-2, and the Rams at 7-1. when you look at that top five, I don't know that I can look at that and necessarily say there's any surprises. I would say I think Arizona is probably the biggest surprise, being 7-1. Obviously, we knew they had the team, just didn't know if they would be able to perform. They had a second half of the year collapse last year, but to me, no surprise to see Green Bay, Dallas, Tampa Bay, and the Rams up there in the top five. What are your initial thoughts when you look at those top teams in the NFC?
Well, before we get any further, since you mentioned the Packers, can we just take 1 second and hear your thoughts on the Aaron Rodgers situation before we go any further?
Yeah. So you and I were talking about it, right? Like, we're not going to get into a COVID vaccine, debate here. I think it's up to each and every individual to do what they need to do. Obviously, they work for a company. Companies can mandate what they need to mandate. With that being said, I mean, listen, if he contracted COVID, my first thought is hopefully that, all the best for him. Unfortunately, I've seen, close friends lose their lives to COVID, so it's not something to play around with. But to your point, you and I were talking about this. He never lied to the NFL. So that's the big thing everybody's trying to take out of this, is that he said he was vaccinated, but he wasn't really vaccinated. And you had a good take on it. And so I'd like for you to expand a little bit. But he never lied to the NFL. He did what he told them he did. So whether that was being vaccinated or not, or if you call it immunization, it is, those are semantics that can be argued. What I think the bigger deal is he's coming into a stretch now where he's got Kansas City this week. Right, that's a game that they would like to get in the win column. Although, I mean, their division they've got a 3-game lead over the Minnesota Vikings, so I don't know that the division's necessarily going to get away from them over the stretch that he might be out, even if it's 2 games. But this is an inopportune time, especially heading into a team like Kansas City, where you could go in there and possibly get a win under your belt against a really good team.
Well, I'll say 2 things about the situation. And it was interesting because we did a break last night, and Michael Viens was in, and he said, if he didn't follow the COVID protocols, he was put people at risk based on, what we believe and what the NFL is following. And I couldn't agree more. But there's 2 things. His vernacular misdirection is not a lie. He used different verbiage than who was not lying. He said immunized. He never used the word vaccinated. So, again, I don't believe that he lied. Did he misguide, misdirect? I don't think he owes the media shit. I don't think anybody does. The media will take your words and twist them the way they see fit anyhow. So what's it matter if he uses a different word? The media is going to pull out snippets and tidbits and twist and turn his words regardless. And I'm not an Aaron Rodgers fan, but I don't think I'm under Lynch. I'm just here so I don't get fined. I don't see why more players don't follow his lead on that. But I will also say that if I read an article today that the NFL is investigating, and they will review tape from the practice facilities, from the games. If he was not following those protocols, at best he gets fined. At worst, they can suspend him if they were egregious and intentional. And then the league could also enforce deeper penalties on the team itself. I don't know. They said they're not opposed to taking away draft picks. They said this at the beginning of the year if teams don't. So this could have but my understanding is what I had read from a couple people close to the situation was that he was getting tested for COVID every day. He was wearing masks in the meeting. He was separating himself. The team knew, the NFL knew, his teammates knew that he was not vaccinated. It just wasn't widely known to the media. How they didn't notice that along the way, that he was getting tested every day, when there's now that the media is more present at practices and stuff, I don't know. But either way, that is a situation I think to monitor closely, because let's just say hypothetically he gets like a 3-game suspension. Then you start to say, hey, can the Vikings kind of come in there and sneak in? Because Jordan Love, this is not a situation where they have a mediocre backup. Jordan Love, by all accounts, is not ready to play in the NFL. They brought in Blake Bortles, for God's sakes. What does that say about Jordan Love?
Yeah, I'd say 2 things. I think the big thing to your point there, you can prove the vaccinations. That's pretty easy to prove. And that the fact that he's been, at least taking the COVID tests on a daily basis. I think where he may fall into a problem is they were saying that it has been noted that he's supposed to wear masks at all times at practices, when not on the field, on the sidelines. And that has not been happening. So that might be to your point where they go back and look at the videos and there's some repercussions there. I would say this: if you are Jordan Love and you're coming in, as daunting as Kansas City's offense on paper might look, their defense is equally as bad on the other side. So coming in and having to play Kansas City's defense, at least you're coming into a game where you've got a chance to use the weapons around you and hopefully, pull a win out. It's not like they're coming into a really, stout defense that's going to put a ton of pressure on them. I think Kansas City's going to try, but Kansas City is they're not where they need to be defensively. So a decent game, I guess, for him to come in and try to get his feet wet, but he's certainly not Aaron Rodgers. And at this point in his career, throwing him in the middle of the season, it's going to be interesting to see how he comes back. Can he be a Mike White and throw for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, or is he going to fall on his face? It's going to be a really interesting game this week.
Yeah, so let's we'll go over these quick to get back to the standings. Like you said, it's the Packers, Cardinals, Cowboys, and Bucks on top of their division, with the Rams, Saints, and Panthers sitting behind. And then it gets a lot more sloppy in the NFC as it pertains to the teams right underneath. So looking at the Packers, Cardinals, Cowboys, Bucks, Rams, Saints, Panthers, which one of those teams don't make it to the playoffs at the end of the year?
I don't see the Panthers getting there unless CMC comes back and takes over that team the way that he was when they started out 3-0. I think you got Tampa Bay and New Orleans definitely making it from the NFC South. I think you could have, San Francisco could sneak in there, or even, I hate to say Seattle at 3-5, but if Russ comes back and can start to play a little bit better, they would have, I think they have a better chance than Carolina at this point getting in there. I think if you look at, the NFC East, the Cowboys to me are the only team right now that look like they're ready to go anywhere. The Eagles are just not where they need to be. Washington is not living up to the hype that they had preseason. A lot of people had a lot of faith in them being able to come out and be that team to kind of push for the division lead there, and it's just not happening. And the Giants are just the Giants. And then you look at the North. I think the Vikings may have a chance to kind of sneak in there. That would be the only other team that I give faith in. So, my first off the list on that would be Carolina Panthers. I just don't know that they're going to have enough to hold on.
Yeah, and I'm looking at their schedule here moving forward. It's not the easiest schedule. They have and the way they're playing ball, every game's a game for them, outside of maybe the Texans. But they have the Patriots, the Cardinals, Washington, Dolphins, Falcons. But then they close the season with this schedule: Bills, Bucks, Saints, Bucks.
Yeah, that's not a 4-game stretch you want.
No, that's to end the season. That's 4 losses. Those teams are going to be fighting for top position, and the way as tight as that NFC is this year, all 4 of those teams, including the Bills, are going to be fighting for top of their conferences, top of their divisions for that bye. So, and then the only team I'd compare it to that might sneak in above them is the Seahawks and the Vikings. So I think it's going to be a Seahawks Vikings fight to get that 3rd wild card spot. I think the rest of those teams stand pretty much put where they're at. Movement within, but I think those other 6 teams make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think right now you look at the cutoff being kind of 10-7 is where you need to finish out to have a chance in those wild card spots. And so you look at some of these teams and, who, you've got the Bears already with 5 losses. So are they going to lose more than 3 games, finish out the year? Most likely the Lions already have their 8 losses. So when you look at the Panthers, they've got 4. The Falcons have 4. So with that schedule, like you said, Panthers could lose the last 4 games of the season, and that could be the nail in the coffin for them. Falcons are going to have to get some things right. We'll see what happens with Calvin Ridley. Obviously, their number one, weapon there. And then you look at San Francisco with 4 losses and Seattle with 5 losses. So, Seattle's on the outside looking in. It's going to be a really, really tough battle. I would have more faith in, Russell Wilson being able to lead a team to the playoffs than I would, Sam Darnold being able to lead the Panthers. So again, that's going to be dependent upon whether, CMC comes back and how healthy he is. So I think we need to watch that pretty carefully to see if Panthers have a chance to hold on.
Yeah, and I would say we can't necessarily count out San Fran, even though their schedule is pretty tough too. If they can get Kittle back, if Garoppolo can get in the zone here, Seattle has as strong of a team, if not stronger, I think, than Seattle. So to say Seattle has a chance and not San Fran. So we'll ask you guys, go ahead, type in the comments. Who do you guys see making that final playoff spot if the other 6 teams stick, which I think we're going to see the Packers, Cardinals, Cowboys, Bucks, Rams, and Saints get in there? Who do you guys see? The Panthers, the Vikings, the Niners, or the Hawks? If they're your 4 option, who grabs that last playoff spot? Vikings, Niners, Seahawks, or the Panthers? I'm sorry, the Panthers there. Which one of those makes it? All right. Well, hey, let's do something real quick because we talked enough about that. Let's switch over to cards for a minute here, Chris. And we talked about Jordan Love playing this week. Mike White is probably going to be the Jets quarterback the rest of the time. We had that Cooper Rush come in and have a great game. And let's talk about how they do that affects the card market. But before we do, can I just throw out this Mike White stat? Because I see everyone posting that his jersey and ball are in the Hall of Fame now for the most yards in a game for a quarterback's first start in the league. Is that what it's in there for, with 400 plus yards?
That's it.
I heard an interesting stat though. Last week, throwing for the most yards, most ever as a rookie on their first start, or not a rookie, most ever from a first start as he's not a rookie. But the thing was, he had the lowest yards in air per throw out of any quarterback last week at 4.5 yards per throw. And it was funny because someone said that that's not typical of a young quarterback or a first start quarterback, because what these defenses will do is they'll kind of coax them into this dink and dunk, and they get bored doing that and they feel like they have to take a shot. So they'll take a long shot, and that's when they wait to make their move. That's when they'll get their pick. That's what they're waiting for. So it's just kind of like fishing. You got to be patient,
Right.
and then you hook them. He never did that. He was patient, he was disciplined, and he was focused. And that's how the Jets got that win. Does that speak to him maybe winning some teams over for a future job?
So what I would think is, first of all, you got to look at it. So, he's not a rookie. He was drafted by the Cowboys. So he's been in the league for a couple of years. So he's had a chance to kind of see it, although he doesn't have a lot of experience under center. But to me, what that is, it's a little bit of a veteran presence. So he's gotten the availability to watch a number of games live and in person and kind of absorb. Also, just great coaching, right? I mean, that's what you want to do. You want to come in, you want to get, the short passes, you want to involve your tight ends, you want to establish a running game, and then it opens up the opportunities. And I think he played it really well. I think it was a well-coached game, a well-called game for the Jets. And, I think there's an opportunity for him. I don't know if he's going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL anytime soon, but definitely, securing his backup role there. And, some of these teams that may be, looking for someone to come in as a solid backup towards the end of the season in case an injury should happen, they might want to keep their eye out for him. That's if the Jets are willing to let him go, because they may see some potential there if Zach Wilson isn't going to, kind of pan out the way they want it to.
Well, and I see someone wrote, let's not invest in Mike White for real. Let's just back up a second, because everyone's like, well, you should invest in Herbert. Let's just do cost risk analysis here, kind of a little bit like, risk reward.
Right.
Herbert's cards are going for like a bajillion times the amount of a Mike White card. If you're doing it as an investment standpoint, then you're looking at a really low risk in Mike White, although they've went up right now a little bit, but he's going to play for the rest of the year. And I don't think people are fully sold on him. So let's just say you can get their comparative Prism rookies for what's a Herbert go for in a Prism rookie right now?
Too much.
$150 maybe for just a base, I don't know, around there, 150. What's a Mike White? $15, $20?
If that, yeah.
If that. Well, look, if he continues to win and the Jets make a little run here, even if he only wins 3 out of the next 4 games, that card's going to go up to $75, $80. If Herbert wins the next 3 or 4 games, maybe that goes up to $175, because we have to remember in Mike White's year, and this is something we forget to talk about in cards, they were not producing Prism in droves as they were in 2020 and 2021 with all these new guys. There was not just as much. And although we want to compare Prism across the board, 2018 Prism is far different than 2020 and 21 Prism, just in sheer volume of cards produced. So, and that's not just Prism, that's just across the board. There were less cards produced during that time because of demand. Demand went up, production went up. So, Chris, what do you think? Would you invest any in Mike White, or you think it's good just to stay away, keep your money in
No, I mean, risk reward, right? I mean, to your point, you can get in so cheap right now. You could even just buy, his National Treasures rookie card pretty cheap relative to some of these players out there. So to buy, invest, ride it out for a couple of weeks, I don't see the harm in it. The thing that I find interesting when we talk about NFL this year compared to this year seems like the card market for the NFL is so much more volatile than it has been in years past. And what I mean by volatility is it's similar to the NBA, right? NBA, you saw players come out and have one good game and prices would fluctuate huge overnight. That's what's happening in the NFL. It used to be long-term strategy. There's still some speculation. Obviously, people are dumping a lot of money into Burrow and Herbert and these guys hoping that they'll pan out long-term. But there is a lot more turn and burn. There's a lot more people going after the quick flips. They're trying to invest in players that have a really good upside for a week or two and then dump them. And you're seeing it across the board. So, yeah, Mike White, why not go out there? If you look at some of these other guys that have came in and just really contributed. I mean, stay with the same team. You look at somebody like Michael Carter. He led all running backs in fantasy points last week, coming in for the Jets at running back. Why would you not take a chance on him or a flyer to kind of stash it, and just do it? Yeah, there you go. Buy the dip, right? I mean,
Shiba, it really is what it is. All these people that were like, I got to get an AMC, I got to get Dogecoin, whatever it is. Listen, there's no different than that in Mike White. You're taking a huge chance, but you're taking a very low risk on it. Is what's the ceiling on that? It's a lot higher than the floor is low, if that makes sense. Your floor on Mike White on a $15 card is probably $10 or $5. So you're going to lose what, $5 or $10? You buy a Herbert card for $150. The dude busts his knees, you're down to 25, 30, but no one's going to buy it if he busts up his knee. He goes down for the season. You're a sitting duck. You know, even if you can sell it, you're going to get maybe half of what you paid for it, which is a $75 loss. Your risk on Mike White is a $10 loss. So I'm not saying go buy one or two, buy like 10 of them. You're in for that. You can buy 10 Mike Whites for the price of one Herbert. If he hits, and even if you only make $20 a pop on it, you're talking about a $200 profit. There's no way that Herbert card, no matter how, unless he wins the Super Bowl this year, you're going to, and even if he does, I don't think you're going to see that Herbert card go up to $350. You're never going to make $200 on that base Prism card.
No, especially with the population runs that they have on, you know, certain products like Prism and like you and I talk about all the time. It's beating a dead horse. You know, graded base cards in Prism and Select and those things. It just, to me, that is just not a smart investment at all. You know, you've got to use your population reports when you start talking about these things and really looking at where there's opportunities to invest from that perspective. To me, it's all about numbered cards. It's all about getting parallels, short prints. You know, that's really where the investment comes into play. And to your point too, it's, you know, it's so cyclical. It's up and down. And so what's the harm in grabbing for the price of one Herbert, 10 Mike Whites, riding it out for, you know, 2 weeks and then, you know, doubling your money? Yeah, because Herbert and these players have gotten to a point where they peaked so high. I'm not saying Herbert's never going to go up. He's a phenomenal quarterback. But to your point, there's bumps, right? So he came out, he smashed all the rookie records. He was at the top of his game, so to speak. And now this year he's mediocre. He's playing average. And so the prices are either going to just fall flat or they're going to start to decrease a little bit. His next bumps come with a playoff win, an MVP season, a Super Bowl. So unless he gets one of those, they're never going to get back to justify those prices.
Yeah, and I just think that's the thing right now in this fall. I told them to hurl insults at us, Chris. They got one. I guess I love my mama says to buy Mike White. So I agree. Right now, the market's pretty volatile right now, and we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, it's more now than ever. Where you used to be able to buy a card and usually at least get what you're paying for it. This year's been a little wacky coming out of the pandemic. We didn't get into this too much, but like what's going on generally in the card market, a lot of inflation between gas, groceries, people getting back to work, paying for childcare, clothes to get back to work. There's all these like economic things, and people want to say the car market's dead. I think there's just a lot of getting back to normal, and we're seeing that affect normalization in the market. But this is also historically a kind of a dead time of the year for football. It's like the end of baseball, the start of basketball, and the middle of the season for football. It's always been this like, and people are getting ready for Christmas, and it's always been this weird time. And we see it pick up here at the end of December and early January as football playoffs come on. But I'm just saying, like, don't spend too much right now. If you want to just still invest, now's the time to buy low on like a Mike White, in my opinion. And don't overinvest in these blue chips right now, because they still are going for top dollar, and they're being priced on their projections, not on their performance.
Yep. So I would agree. Here, let's do a little exercise real quick. We'll just run through like the top three positions. We'll go quarterback, running back, wide receiver. If you look at performance so far through the first half of the year in 2021, and you look at the top performers, you tell me from an investment perspective and an affordability perspective who makes sense, right? All right. So if you look at quarterbacks, top quarterbacks, Tom Brady. You can't afford to get into Tom Brady. No. Josh Allen, he's on the rise. His prices are increasing now.
I'm trying. I literally, as a fan, even though I think his cards are going to go up, don't get me wrong. I think you're never going to go wrong buying those two guys. Well, especially Brady, you're not going to go wrong. His career is set in stone. So even if you're buying inserts, but I see what you're saying. But Josh Allen, even though I know he's going up, it's risky. If he breaks his knee, he's active. His career is far from set and being great for the rest of his career.
Right. So then you look at number 3 and number 4 on that list. This is where your investment perspective comes into play. Matthew Stafford, Jalen Hurts. Those are guys, if you want to take a chance to invest in, they're number 3 and number 4 in the NFL through the first half of the year. Those are the guys you put some money into. Number 5 is Patrick Mahomes, 6 is Murray, 7 is Lamar Jackson. So even Murray, Jackson, and Mahomes, those are guys you can't get cheap. So where am I going to maybe take a chance? I'm going to take a chance on Matthew Stafford winning the Super Bowl with arguably the best team in the NFL.
You just like I kind of got like a goosebump moment. I didn't even think of that, dude, because they just signed Von Miller. I mean, the Rams are going for it. The Rams are absolutely going for it. And then Matt Stafford, you got to go back. That's when like Topps was still around, when his rookie was still around. There's a lot of options for cards that aren't around. And I would say in an oversaturated market, to bring in some cards that we don't see anymore, if he goes to the Super Bowl, man, talk about I don't think it's too late to buy on him yet either, because they're still not giving Stafford the credit. There's a lot of talk about Cooper Kupp. There's a lot of talk about the defense. But Stafford's not having a bad season. 4th in the NFL. I don't know what his cards are priced at right now. Have you done any research on his cards?
They're still relatively cheap. He's actually third in the NFL right now. So if you look from sheer fantasy perspective, he's overall points 187. He had 2 points above Jalen Hurts. I mean, separating Tom Brady's up by almost 20 points over the second place Josh Allen, and then everybody else there from 2 through 7 or 8 are kind of all within 10 to 15 points of each other. But then even if like you look at historically like running backs, right? So if you go down the list, Derrick Henry obviously probably would go down as one of the greatest running backs ever if he continues on the trajectory, but he's out for the year. So what's going to happen to his prices? You're going to start to see a dip. Now might be a time to go ahead and jump on some of him. But then if you look at the other top 5, you've got Jonathan Taylor, Austin Eckler, Joe Mixon, and Aaron Jones, right? So Joe Mixon's one of those guys. I don't know that anybody ever buys heavy into Joe Mixon. But Cincinnati's offense is turning it on. People are having to put, double coverage on people like Jamar Chase. It's going to open up and soften the middle of the field for the run game. And then you've got Joe Mixon coming in there. So there's an opportunity there. And then if you just round out wide receivers and look at that real quick, Cooper Kupp. I mean, you've been a Cooper Kupp fan for a long time. So I'll give you credit for kind of seeing that diamond in the rough. But if he continues on the trajectory that he's on right now, and you've got his Prism rookie card and PSA 10 silver, that's a great investment at this point, especially if he breaks the receiving records, which he's on pace to do. I hope
so. I have his NT 101, so I'm really hoping that happens. But unfortunately, in cards, it just at least the beginning of the year, maybe people were really like, "Oh, this is just a good start for Cooper Kupp." I looked it up, and so I'm going to check here. I'm going to write a note here because we're going to talk about it next show, and I would like to have one before the games on Sunday. But I will say this. Cooper Kupp's cards, his select tie-dye out of 25 was going for like $50. His rookie select tie-dye out of now, I don't know. I'll do a little quick research here and see. But I looked at him like, man, why don't I buy that? And I started thinking, well, wide receivers never really pan out. But if they go to the Super Bowl, do we see that change? If he sets a receiving record, do we see that change? And that to me is going to be that benchmark moving forward if it's worth investing in receivers or not.
So here would be my suggestion. This is risk reward, right? But if you're one that wants to kind of go all in from their perspective, the Rams are going all in. So between now and the end of the year, stock up on some Stafford, some Cooper Kupp, and some Darrell Henderson. Sit on them, wait till they make it to the Super Bowl, sell them right before the Super Bowl, and that's where you're going to maximize your profits. Reason why I say that is it's all based on hype. Everything is hype based. So what happened to Patrick Mahomes? His cards dipped after they won the Super Bowl. So you want to sell them at the peak time. So if you want to get in cheap, get in on Cooper Kupp, Darrell Henderson, and Matthew Stafford. Stock up on them. If they make it to the Super Bowl, sell them off. You'll probably see a decent profit and return on your investment there.
So the select 2017 select Cooper Kupp tie-dye Prism, 23 out of 25 PSA 10, sold for $312 on October 23rd. On November 2nd, it just sold. Now, best offer, I'm going to look to see what it was. It just sold for $850 or best offer. I'm going to find out what that is.
I'd imagine at least $500.
I would say so. Again, people were very and if you go all the way back to September 26th, that raw card sold for $102. So I'm going to do more research so I have more information in front of me. But like I said, I looked week 3 of the season after he was off to that hot start, and I could not believe how cheap his cards were still going for. And there hasn't been a ton sold since then. It looks like they are definitely on the rise, though. So I don't think it's too early, though, if he continues this record-setting season.
It's just an interesting strategy. I'm curious to hear what everybody else thinks as far as with their strategy. Someone just saying they're buying up Calvin Ridley's. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a bad investment whatsoever. Calvin Ridley's certainly going to be the star for that offense for years to come. Matt Ryan's going to be someone that's always going to get yards, so he's going to be a reliable receiver there. It's just interesting how these strategies work. Deebo Samuel, that's another person. If you look at it, right, people, if you went for that division, if you were talking about the NFC West, probably more money for sure was dumped into a DK Metcalf than a Deebo Samuels. Deebo Samuels is currently outperforming DK Metcalf, so there's an opportunity there. You got to look at the little subtleties. None of these are going to be get rich quick schemes. You're not going to be able to turn and burn these cards for thousands of dollars. But listen, if you can double, if you a $100 investment for $200, I mean, who doesn't want to double their money?
Yeah. And I would say it's not like necessarily a long-term hold, because who knows? I think the Rams are all in it to win it. But if you're looking for a volatile reward opportunity, that's a risky, but it could pay off. Yeah, I like it. And Matt, you just blew my mind with Matt Stafford, Kristen. We did not talk about that before the show. It was not even a name that brought up. And we did not normally we come into the show with more of an agenda and a plan and we know we're going to go. We kind of were winging it, and I like it. Chris, how do you feel right now? Where do we want to go with this next?
Well, I mean, I think we kind of tipped on it. From a Carr perspective, we were talking a little bit NBA, so I think we needed to just at least scratch the surface there. Obviously, it's early in the season, so it's really hard to start talking playoffs and emerging, teams and things of that nature. We're only, less than 10 games into the season, but I did want to touch on it because we're talking about investment opportunities, and there comes a certain point in time where you have a select group of rookies that come into a rookie class. And the question is, do I invest in A, do I invest in B, or do I get a little bit of both? Right. And so like, if you look at the 2018, rookie class for quarterbacks, we had Lamar Jackson, you had Josh Allen, you had Rosen, you had Baker. So where are you divesting your money? Some people went Lamar Jackson, some went Josh Allen, some went Baker, some kind of invested a little bit everywhere. Well, same thing happens when you start looking at the basketball season. And so the big question, if you go back to the 2019 season, was, do I invest in Zion Williamson? Do I invest in Ja Morant? Do I do a little bit of both? Or there's some people that didn't believe in either of them. Well, if you take this small sample size of where we are currently sitting, into the 2021 basketball season, you've got Ja Morant currently tied in fourth place, points per game at 27 points per game. You've got Zion Williamson at 325 pounds sitting on his couch eating burgers.
I was like, wait, where is he going with the points on this? He doesn't have these
So what I'm saying is there's a lot of people that went heavy into the Zion train, and I'm not saying that's blowing up in their face, but I think if you're a Ja Morant investor, you're feeling pretty good about your investment right now this far into the season. He's been just a dynamic, prolific player. He's one of the young stars of the league. And where I was going is, we always look at quarterbacks are what drive the market in the NFL. And so we went through the list of the top performers so far this year. And you've got people like Brady and you've got Mahomes, those people that are always going to be there, but who are the young stars? So I'm kind of flipping the coin and looking at the NBA right now. So if you look at their top 10 average scorers so far, you've got Paul George, which I think is a little bit of a surprise. I don't know that a lot of people saw that coming. Kevin Durant, Giannis, Steph Curry, Nikola Jokic, all on that list. But then you've got surprises in people like Jaylen Brown, Ja Morant, and Zach LaVine. So I think there's areas of opportunity for investment there. And I think it's just an interesting kind of dynamic to look at when you start saying, all right, where am I going to put my money? Where am I going to invest? There's some strategy to win big. There's some strategy to play it safe. It's all risk reward, but I think we're seeing in the NBA, just there's some emerging stars. And I think Ja Morant is one of those that it's going to be on the radar for a long time. So that's my investment strategy there. I'm heavy into Ja Morant personally, but I think there's a great opportunity there. If you can't afford to get into some of these stars like Giannis, LeBron, and some of these other individuals.
Yeah, and I want to touch base real quick. I'm going to do a little promo here. I'm going to give away a $5 credit for Blazzzin. All you have to do is type your name like Jordan Poole just did because he had a question. But go ahead. We have 3 breaks up right now. Actually, one in we have a basketball, a 2021 mixer, and football, and we have a baseball mixer up that may be full for the day, but we're doing another one today. But type your name is all you have to do. And even if your name shows up, just type your names if you want to be entered for a $5 random. We'll do that at the end. But I will say it's funny. Everyone was collecting Zion, and that was the guy. He was the number 1 pick. And, even though Ja Morant won Rookie of the Year, he stayed healthy. He played well. He looks good. He looks like a basketball player as opposed to Zion, who looks like a super freak, a superhuman. But like Barkley said to Shaq this week, Zion looks like you and me had a baby this summer. And
he does.
Dude, Shaq was dying, dude. It was so funny to see the interaction because he's like, you're right. Like, what's like, he goes, they must make good food in New Orleans because he's been nothing but eating. I don't know how you lose. I know that he, works out hard, but he's dealing with injury. So he has to limit the amount of energy he can exert. How can he shed those? There's no way he can play it that way. He's going to injure himself even more. Like, what does he have to do to get back to basketball?
Well, so Charles Barkley brought up the best point to it. He's like, you have a responsibility to take care of yourself on and off the court. And during the NBA season is not when you start getting in shape. You get in shape prior to the NBA season. So he's going to struggle, I think. I mean, we're still several weeks away from seeing him on the court. But we were already seeing injuries. We're already seeing weight issues. And those were the 2 big things people were talking about. Is his weight issues going to impact, how he performs in the court? So I think that's going to be interesting to see. Some people are chiming in. There are some players out there that people have listed. So Jordan Poole, again, is one of those guys. He's playing on the Warriors. You look at, Steph Curry gets all the attention on that team. He's averaging 16.4 points per game. He came out last night against Charlotte, scored 31 points. So he's one of those people, to keep an eye out for. Cole Anthony, in Orlando there. He's another player that's really been turning it on. So there's areas of opportunity there. So you got to do a little bit of homework, but I think what you have to do is peel back the layers. It's star players are going to be long-term investments. There's always going to be opportunities, but not everybody can go out and afford, a LeBron James rookie or a Steph Curry rookie. So who are those next tier players that you can do one of two things? You can invest now, you can quick flip them, and then you can take that quick flip money and invest in a long-term Hall of Fame player. So there's how you make money to afford those players, or you take the chance of invest now, hold the line, and wait and see where it pans out. And, for me so far with Ja Morant, that's what I did last year. I picked Ja over Zion, and so far it's working out in my favor. But again, we're one injury away from things changing completely.
And basketball players are kind of like wide receivers to me in football. They take like 2 or 3 years to really get on the radar, even if they have good rookie seasons. Like a lot of these the card prices start to really pick up their second, third, fourth year in the season. Basketball players have longer careers, the good ones do. So it'll be interesting to see how the last 2 years pans out over the next course of the year or two.
Yeah, it's a really long season, so we'll kind of see how things pan out from that perspective. NBA is just one of those things we're getting into it. So we're going to be talking more NBA as we start to produce more episodes and have more conversation, and the season kind of drags along. We'd be remiss if we didn't at least mention the World Series. Obviously, it's no surprise that Mike and I, baseball is not our forte, never claimed for it to be. I'm just not a fan of cheating in sports. And so obviously there's some stigma with the Houston Astros. There's, trash can gate that's lingering out there. So, I think the Braves coming out and winning in dramatic fashion the way they did, they had to win at the end of the season several games to even make the playoffs and then come out and dominate the way they did. Good for Atlanta. They've got some young stars there. Ronald Acuna, he's one of the top guys in the league right now. Unfortunately, he was injured and not able to play. So from a card value perspective, winning the World Series doesn't help him. But what it does is just catapults Atlanta. If they weren't already one of the bandwagon teams, they're definitely in the eye of the public now as one of the top teams, along with the Yankees, that each year is going to probably see more televised games. Their players are going to be elevated. And so you're going to start to see some of those players like Ronald Acuna gain in value. So congratulations to Atlanta. I'm not hating the fact that, Houston lost. Altuve is one of those players that I just can't even stand looking at him on the screen. He just looks as good as he is. I'm not a fan. So glad to see that Atlanta was able to pull that off. And that's all the input I have on baseball, because I really don't know much more about it.
I mean, I think it was a good consequence for the Astros fans to have to lose that at home, kind of suffer that loss. And unfortunate for Braves fans, they didn't get to enjoy it in Atlanta, because that last game was in Houston, correct?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. It would have been nice to see that. But I will say that it's crazy to think about Acuna not being present for that and that they still won. I mean, think about what that's going to look like moving forward. They have to be excited moving forward. I like that how many lifelong Braves fans now. There used to be a ton of, when TBS broadcasted the games, at least we always saw the Braves around here. There's a lot of more Braves fans, it seemed. But then they stopped broadcasting Braves games, and I feel like a lot of people stopped really paying attention if you can't watch your team. Curious to see, like you said, if more networks pick it up, if they're on more, how many fans they pick up over the next few years. Are they going to, be kind of like the new America's baseball team, take over for a little bit?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So baseball's on the radar. The other big thing, and I think, we're starting to see, now you wonder how much of it is like market manipulation or what things are going on, but there's some sports that are making, prime time. So Sports Card Investor recently, he does his top 5. He switched gears and actually had a UFC fighter in one of his top 5 investment opportunities right now. So UFC is getting a lot of play. There's a huge card coming up this Saturday. I would recommend. Listen, it's a leap to pay $50 or $60 for a pay-per-view. I understand it. Not everybody has it. This is one of those that has potential of being a really, really good fight card. So if, there ever was one that you wanted to potentially dip your toe in the water and order, or at least go out and watch, I would say this is one. Just going to kind of run down the slate of fights that we have right now. Justin Gaethje is fighting Michael Chandler. That's going to be a really good lightweight bout between two just brawlers that like to just sit in there, go toe-to-toe, beat the crap out of each other. It's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. There's a bantamweight fight between veteran Frankie Edgar and Marlon Vera. I think that's going to be a good fight there. And then you've got 2 championship fights on the docket. So Rose Namajunas, she's currently the women's strawweight title holder. She is defending her belt against Zhang Wei Li, who is the former champion. Rose Namajunas actually head kicked her, knocked her out to earn the belt there. And then in the second championship, it's Kamaru Usman, the Nigerian Nightmare, defending his welterweight belt against Colby Covington, who is a really outspoken voice for the UFC. He's kind of one of those Conor McGregor-esque type fighters. This is a rematch as well. The last fight, Colby Covington was actually fighting really well. The fight ended up being stopped. He broke his jaw. So these are going to be some really good fights, but it's really interesting to see some of these one-off sports kind of making it into the headlines, UFC getting some attention, and obviously WWE signing an exclusive with Panini now, so that's going to change the card market as well. Not sure if you have any thoughts on some of these outlier sports and the impact they can have on the card community.
I mean, I just know with WWE and the new wrestling thing, there's a little bit of divide in that thing. We've seen a dip in some of the ratings for WWE. I hope that's not the case, as it looks like Panini's and Topps are both going to go to these off sports. Topps said they're not going. I heard recently that Topps publicly stated they're not going anywhere. Even if Fanatics takes over baseball, they're still going to make baseball cards. I don't know what that means. Licensing. I don't know if it means they'll be retired players or if they're going to be on licensed stuff. I don't know how all that works. Top says they're not going anywhere. Panini looks like they're going to be focused on these all-sport things like, WWE. They're going to try to get, I think, golf going in the Upper Deck, I think, has that now. They're going to get, I think they're going to try to eat up all the other sports and kind of focus on that. So, I don't know. We'll see going forward. It's nice. I'm excited. NASCAR Prism comes out this week. So, that
NASCAR's taking off. F1, all I know is Lewis Hamilton because that's all I ever hear, but apparently huge money in the F1 circuit as well. So, we're seeing some love across the industry, which is great. I'm looking forward to going to one of these big shows. I know we've got nationals coming up next year, Atlantic City, which obviously I'll be there for, but hopefully you and I can get out to one of these Dallas shows or one of these other large shows.
Chris, I'm going to do you an invite right here before I forget. I know we're on live, but on January 8th, I believe it is, if you want to come my way and stay over for a day or two, I'm doing a card show on the 8th, so you should come
Sold.
this way. All right. Done. I'll get you the info on that. We'll go live and we'll do breaks there and stuff. It'll be fun.
Yep. I'm on the books. Sounds good to me. Good stuff. Well, listen, for throwing something together last minute, it's been a couple weeks. We had to knock the rust off a little bit, but I enjoyed it. We made it through an hour, which seems like it's been 15 minutes. So I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah, and you know what we're going to do, guys? I'm going to go live Sunday morning. Chris, I know I don't know what your schedule looks like. If not, Saturday night, but most likely Sunday morning after early service for me. I'm going to come at you with the games, a little bit of preview. I'm going to have a couple what I think are good bets this week, a couple fantasy tips. I know you guys know that I suck at that stuff, but I seem to be doing all right. At least everyone seems to think I do. My account says differently, but I will give you a few of the people. I've been listening to more podcasts on as far as betting goes and stuff like that. But no big bets, but I like to put in like little parlays and stuff like that. The Bears killed me last week. I'm done with the Bears. I'm done with the Lions. They've ruined too many of my parlays, but I want to get more into the NFL games this week. I don't do a lot of college, but Chris, if you want to come in and maybe recap college, and I know you watch it a little bit more than I do, and we can do some NFL this week, and we're going to go live again. I think we're liking these live shows, Chris. I don't know how you feel.
I'm a fan of them. Yeah, I definitely would give some input on some college. We got Ohio State fans with their panties in a bunch because the first round of the playoff seedings are out, and Ohio State is not a part of it, although Alabama with one loss is. So there's some disgruntled Ohio State fans. So certainly something we'll touch base on, and just look for us to be a little bit more consistent moving forward. I think it always takes that first show to kind of get back in the swing of things. So we'll get back on our regularly scheduled drops on Friday mornings, and then in between we're going to have some fun stuff as well. So
I got to random off the credit before we go. I promised I would do that, and I didn't get any more names. I got 5 names: Randy, Coda, Mark Gray, Scott Ripley, Stas Dixon, and Hitman Hunter. So give me a minute. I'm going to share my screen here. We're going to random that up. I'm going to give away a $5 credit here. So Blazzzin Sportscast, you can use this on any of our Blazzzin Breaks pages. We have a bunch of stuff up, and we put more up today. So we do a min roll 5 on all of our randoms. If most of you obviously are familiar, that's a 3. If I missed you, I'll get you in on the next one, but I didn't see any other names since Jordan Poole's actually a player in the NBA, not a person. Scott Ripley, you got $5 credit. Miss you, Scotty. So Scott got himself $5 credit there, and we'll just I'll do that every time we go live. I'm gonna give away a $5 credit. You can use it on any of our pages. So thanks for coming in, Chris. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, so your Jordan Poole is going to be like me, continually trying to put the Miami Dolphins in the wrong division. So they're putting them in the AFC South.
Well, Ripley, good luck with the baby. See, I wondered if that's why maybe you've been quiet. I didn't know. I didn't see anything on your pages. I haven't seen anything, but good luck with that, man. We're keeping you in our mind. And Chris, take care of your shoulder. We'll be back this weekend, guys.
Sounds good. Appreciate it, everybody.